Um, with the mic on. All right. I'd ask that Rachel and or Brandy don't roll call. And I would ask Keith to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I don't have any new announcements. Do you, Alex? Okay. We have two sets of minutes to approve, May 8th of 2025 and May 13th of 2025. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments, edits, or corrections? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no appearances that I'm aware of? No? Okay. So we'll move to new business. Item 7.1, review and potential action on J&M Davis Holdings LLC revolving loan program application. So I'll ask Alex if he would like to introduce this.
Yeah, so if you recall, we had an application at our June meeting, or excuse me, our May meeting for a tenant who is looking to start a Italian pizza restaurant in 402 North Main, which is also the building that has Sizzling Hut and Hairtopia in it. If you recall, I've got their, so the memo's on screen. I'll pull up their application here in a sec, just so we have something to refresh our memory. They had requested 125,000, which is more than our maximum award of 50,000. So that was one thing we talked about, you know, how we might view that going forward. So at that meeting, you all directed me to have the loan review kind of do their analysis of it. I'll bring up their application here just for reference first. So we can see some of the costs that they're looking at, removing old floor, office walls, installing commercial hoods, basically everything and anything to get this up into a functioning restaurant. Overall project cost, they anticipated $250,000. Their funds available for the project are $125,000. And they had a couple quotes and estimates for us to look at. I'm gonna switch gears and bring up the short form analysis, if you recall, from the first time that we had one of these loans come through, and from the presentation that our bank partners gave earlier this year, I believe. They will use this, they call it a short form analysis with a couple different criteria that they use to pass along information to you all to make a decision on, you know, how does this fit program goals, but also, you know, what's the financial viability of this? And Excel is taking a very long time to open. All right.
Maybe if you have Carol touch it, it'll open.
Right. Yeah, it's probably true. It knew that I was not a spreadsheet person, so it didn't want to work for me. So there's a pass-fail criteria here on the right-hand side. Again, this is based on kind of some of the input that we gave to the banks. It's a fairly low bar. We did end up pulling a credit score here. I have another tab here that goes into the financials. So as part of our requirements for applicants, we ask that if they're a business, they send business financials, inventory, basically a snapshot of what the financials of the business are. If in this case, this is a startup, right? First business, so there are no historicals. So we requested personal financials. They provided 3 years of personal financials. The credit report that was pulled also showed some debt that are associated with the applicant as well. And I want to be respective of or mindful of the fact that we're in a public meeting. So I'm going to not be super specific with their personal financials. But the long and short of it is, in talking with our loan review committee, this is a riskier loan for us to make. The personal debt coverage of the applicant is already stretched. So the applicant is taking out non-traditional, so not bank financing for this project in the form of a second mortgage, as well as a personal loan. And then obviously asking for a loan here as well. All of that is to say, you know, they're not going to be securing bank financing. So when I was looking at what are the things that we could do to kind of give ourselves some security in this if we were to make a loan, one was like a contingency. Well, we'll make this loan to you if you're going to go out and get bank financing, because then somebody would deem you worthy. We don't have that option now because they're not going that route. And it's likely that if they were to go that route, they wouldn't secure bank financing. So I'm bringing this here to you all to see, I guess, appetite for making a risky loan, but then also discussing what other options there may be in terms of securing this if there was an instance of default. So one other thing just to mention is, and this is something that we've tossed around, I mentioned to Carol and talked with our loan review committee as well, the property owner, so this is the business that's the applicant. The property owner is an eligible applicant. They could have applied to this loan themselves as well. They passed that on to the tenant to do so, and that's their right. But there could be an avenue here if we wanted a little bit more security to talk with the property owner and see if they'd be willing to guarantee this as well. So there's a couple different options from that standpoint, but I want to kind of get your sense of how willing are we to make an otherwise risky loan?
One other bit of information I'd like to add, I talked to Tom Spitz, as did you, and he had reviewed this and he had suggested that the idea of the property owner, because of the being able to assign an asset, would help reduce risk, but also that should we go ahead in some way with this applicant, he would be willing to talk with them about what kind of information do we really need to know, and does the applicant really need to understand in order to help to make this a less risky endeavor. I think some of my concern was that there was some unrealistic feelings about what kind of money could be made in an operation like this. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we could certainly continue to engage and have some coaching. But because there's not a historical business record here, Tom, one of our lending partners, asked the applicant to put together just like a business plan with some projections, sort of a litmus test to say, hey, can you do this? And it was, as Jane kind of mentioned, maybe a little bit unrealistic. So that's one thing to consider too. I'm not sure that the actual operations, I don't run a pizza shop for a business, so for a living, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm questioning whether operations can support this debt too.
Okay, questions? That's Rebecca and then Doug.
Let Doug go.
Doug?
I just have one question. If they were only asking for the 50,000, would that change anything? As far as the risk?
No, so the analysis was performed as if it was a $50,000 commitment,
Okay.
which was our max.
Rebecca?
I'm hesitant, very hesitant. In one sense, this program is for people like this, but in the other sense, we also have to be fiscally responsible and take into account obvious risks. And I think unless the owner of the property was willing to come on board with this in some respect, whether it be a guarantee or, whether, they would take it on, almost like a co-signer type effect. If they were willing to do something like that, then I would be more inclined to this. But as it stands right now, I would probably be a no.
Do you know if they own anything else?
Yeah, so the only asset that really showed up was the house.
It's already mortgaged. Right. One of the things that I was wondering, most of the improvements that I thought I saw were building type improvements. So if they defaulted on the loan, those improvements would stay with the building. So it almost makes sense that the owner of the building be part of that equation.
Some would and some wouldn't, but that's definitely something that we could require the funds be allocated towards, is the improvements that would stay, right? So if they're doing something that are the tenant improvements interior to the space that only pertain to their kind of business, and if another kind of business comes in there and they're going to rip it all out because the plumbing doesn't work for theirs or whatever, then that would change. But there will be some that would pertain, that would stay with the property. So yes, I can see the argument there. So their quotes that they provided were plumbing, and it wasn't a complete picture of the project. So if we were to look at anything, and I brought up just a draft development and loan agreement too, I think we'd want to have a better understanding of the full scope of the project. And then to your point, Jane, make sure that if we allocated funds towards this, it was going to things that were to remain in the facility or to upgrade the facility, regardless of who's the tenant in that space.
The other question I had was, is there any evidence of either of these applicants having experience running another restaurant?
Anecdotally, yes. So Jeff, who I've met with, he's the primary applicant, and he would be the one running this business. He has extensive food and beverage experience managing restaurants, managing specifically pizza places. So at least verbally, he has experience with that.
Because, I agree that these are the types of businesses that we would like to get off the ground.
Sure.
Yeah. But yes, Sheila, I'm sorry.
Exactly what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. I think I agree with Rebecca that we have to be fiscally responsible, but we're trying to fill the gap for a business that might otherwise not be able to come. So I think we have to weigh the benefit to the community that it would bring by putting a business in the space with the amount of risk. And so we're not a bank, but I do think we have to consider that that's why we're stepping in, is to fill those kinds of gaps. And that doesn't mean I don't think it's a good idea to try and get the building owner because the building owner will benefit, one, because they'll have a tenant, two, because there would be improvements to the property. And so I think it's a reasonable request to have them back it, but I would be very interested in pursuing that so that we can make this happen. I think our job is to try and get to yes. So that's where
Have you had any conversation with the owner of the building?
I've had a lot of conversations with the owner, not about this specifically. So that would be a new piece of it, but I don't think that would fall on deaf ears. I think it would be an open conversation. The other thing that will point out too, totally appreciate and understand that. I mean, that is the goal, right? I guess that's honestly is part of my question is what is the goal? And one is for businesses and starting up and stuff like that. The other is improvements on property, right? And so I think that to me is, especially with the redevelopment as a piece. So the small business grant program that we're doing with Windsor, definitely a business focus. This program, great to support small businesses. I feel personally that the mission of CDA on the redevelopment side is property improvements and upgrading property. So I think there's kind of twofold there. But just to play this out, if we did get the property owners buy-in, I just want to make sure that we still have to be, I think, to a certain degree, comfortable with the fact that even if we get their buy-in and a personal guarantee, there still could be a default on this loan. And to get recourse against that, we would have to go to court and do all that stuff for a $50,000 loan, which we certainly can do. I just don't know what our prospects would be if that defaulted, even if we had the property owner securing this. So I think at the end of the day, no matter what we do, we'll try to have as much in here teeth as possible. But we have to also have a degree of comfort that there's a very real possibility that we're going to be on the hook for the loan.
Plus, I agree with everything, but I think you also got to look, we need business on that end too. I mean, we got pizza places on this end, but outside of, very little down there.
They asked for 125,000. Can they do it for 50,000? Do we know that?
So I think right here in this agreement, that would be one of the contingencies. Is before we, execute a loan, or I guess make any disbursements for a loan, we need to make sure that they have the funds to complete it. So currently, and the credit report shows this as well, they have 140,000 towards this project. So, do the math, 50,000 gets them to 190.
And do we know what the total budget is?
They gave us an estimate of 250,000, but I think that was a very loose 250,000. That's my opinion.
Rebecca?
So I agree with everything that everybody has been saying. If we could get, and I understand what you were saying, even if we did get the backing of the property owner, we still could be end up on the hook for it. And I understand that. What I'm saying is I would be more comfortable in agreeing to this if the property owner who is going to benefit from this backed it, or at least, like I was saying, kind of a cosigner almost effect in some way, shape, or form. All that said, I think the focus of what you were talking about, business versus property, I think that's a really important distinction that we need to keep in mind with this particular program. And I think you were spot on with that. And with that, that makes me more inclined to potentially agree to this. I'm just very cautious because yes, I want the business. I want these people to succeed. But one of the questions I have is, has the question been asked, what would happen if they didn't get it?
I did have that conversation with him when we met the first time before he applied. And, I think I don't remember exactly what he answered, but he was going to explore other funding sources, which I don't know what those would be.
Yeah.
So, I guess reading between the lines of your question, if we don't support this, in other words, would it still go forward?
Right.
I don't know the answer.
And I guess my only other question would be, are they already signed tenants, or are they tenants with the contingency that they're able to get this funding to, not just this funding, but funding enough to make the improvements?
I don't know definitively the terms of their lease agreement. I know they have a lease agreement signed. So I don't know if it has those types of contingencies. My guess is that it probably doesn't. But I know that our permitting team over there has also made me aware that there are different kinds of electrical building permits being pulled for that space. So I'm going to say with a degree of confidence that they have a lease and they're already looking at doing some of this work.
Okay.
Which is a whole other thing because our loan application says you gotta wait before doing any work. So I don't know if they've actually done any work or if they're just pulling permits, but it's something that we'll need to flesh out.
Okay, thank you.
The other question, I know that they had approached Callie about a liquor license.
Yeah.
And obviously we haven't yet seen that, but, as part of that, she was concerned because they hadn't named the business or they didn't, do they actually have some of that organizational work done?
Yeah. So, I mean, even just talking about it, you know, those, to me, those are also a little bit red flags, right? They're potentially doing work and having these conversations without really securing funding too. But, how does this sound? Our next meeting is in July, second week of July. I will work with our legal to put together as strong an agreement as possible, and then also connect with the property owner, and we'll bring back some kind of an agreement in July. And if it seems promising, you know, we can move forward with this. Otherwise, you know, I guess we won't.
And I would also suggest that you have them contact Tom Spitz to set up a meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we want them to be successful, provide them with resources.
And they need the coaching, clearly. I'm
Yep.
not trying to kill the project. You know, I like pizza.
Yeah.
Um,
The other thing too, that I didn't mention, but I do want to mention, while it's not directly pertinent to this loan or to this applicant, is that same building has this sizzling hut in there. And that has changed hands, and there's a new owner of that who has also submitted an application to this program and wants to do like a Thai fusion type of restaurant in that space.
Is he serving already?
No, they're not, to my knowledge, they're not serving. I think this was just recently, like within the last week and a half, that they closed on a lease there. So you're going to be seeing another application for this building, just a different space. So between these two, you know, we're going to be injecting a bit of cash into that building, which is a good thing, right? I mean, it's right down the street from our project as well, which is a priority area.
But it's also places that tenants could eat.
Yep. All those are true.
So it has a lot of value. I'd love to see it work. I'm just not sure. Just sort of feel like it needs stronger feet on the ground.
Yeah. So worst case scenario, if they defaulted, essentially this becomes our loan because it's a pass through from our bank partners. And then we're on the hook for a 7% interest loan for $50,000 to the banks, which I'm sure we'd probably just pay off pretty quickly.
That brings up a great question. How would we pay that off if we got on the hook for it?
I was going to say, you just sold a building and you're in the process of selling a building and you're going to have some money. I mean, you have money.
But that's for
Just a
something
matter of
else.
that how you want to spend it.
Yeah, that's the question. Would we be able to pay that off and still be able to do our project?
So one potential would be, so each of the bank partners has a $50,000 line of credit extended to us that we borrow from. Well, we also came into this program with $50,000 in cash from our own to make grant payments. So we could use that money to buy ourselves out of the loan. So just thinking through, you know, worst case scenarios, something that we need to be cognizant of. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yes, Sheila.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question about the not starting before the funds are dispersed. Could they argue that they're not spending this money, that they're spending the money that other money?
Yeah, so we would just have to make sure that any project work associated with our loan hasn't started.
Okay. So I didn't see it. I was looking for plans for the front. Anxious for that to be improved. Is that in their plan?
I know that they were planning to do some facade improvements and the property owner herself has intended to do some improvements. So at some point, something's going to happen to that facade. Who is the responsible party? I couldn't tell you right now.
Get the dents out of the side.
That too.
So they're not.
Right. Well, and that's, I mean, that's, part of why I bring it up is, are those part of the priorities? So, okay, I think I have a direction.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that, then we'll move to 7.2, discussion and potential action to appoint members to the Small Business Grant Review Commission. This is our joint committee with Windsor. I will say that no one volunteered, and our newest member, who we knew would not be here weeks 1 and 2, did volunteer, Jean Manchesky. So I would suggest that I'm by statute, I need to.
So we need to make 2 appointments tonight. One by the intergovernmental agreement is appointing you to that. And then the second member who Jean has said she'd be willing to do it. So I'd be looking for, I guess, a motion to make those 2 appointments.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any comments or questions? And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Opposed? Motion carries. And I will say Jean sent apologies. She knew when she accepted the committee, she was not here week 1 or month 1 and month 2, but she will be here.
She does exist, I promise.
I know she does.
And she appears all the time and at all of her responsibilities. So,
She is a very responsible person.
yes. All right, item 7.3, review and potential action on a resolution authorizing a CDA chairperson and executive director to execute a property management agreement with Gardner Millis Investments LLC.
This is my fault. We've already approved this agreement with them and they approved it. They signed, we countersigned it. We all signed the wrong one. So we signed an old version of this. I didn't include in the packets. I did include the correct version in packets, but I didn't include the red line so that you could see where the changes were. So I've got it up here on screen. The only difference between the one that we executed is, so context, this is for the management agreement. If we were to sell 509, we would still be managing that. So this says that upon closing, upon them purchasing the building, we need to have an agreed upon budget for the rest of the year, know what our costs are, what we're operating under, as provisions for that. That's all associated with the budget, and I think that might even be it. Just double check here. Yeah.
How did we decide we'd all signed the wrong one?
I mean, so I sent them this version and said, this was before one of the, I don't even remember what meeting, probably our May meeting, maybe April. And they sent it back saying, sent me an email back saying, okay, see attached. They didn't send the attachment. I said, I don't see any attachment. Then they sent it back with the attachment and it was signed and I didn't check to make sure it was the right one. And then we signed it. And so that's how it got missed. So I missed it when they sent it back.
I used to go to my parents like that. It's all my fault. It really is, but I need you to forgive me.
Right. Yeah.
Move to approve.
Well, hey, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. We can do a motion in a second and then I'll add a few more comments if that's all
All
right.
right, motion by Rebecca. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And second by Doug?
So the reason this is coming before you is because we're likely going to be closing on the sale of 509 next week. And this is a piece of the closing documents that we need to have executed. So the buyer has secured their financing, gone through inspections, and we'll be changing hands of that property pretty shortly if all goes well. So
We already closed on the apartment complex with
Yep.
them, so. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Who'd have believed we'd ever sell that building? That's wonderful. Congratulations, Alex.
It was meant to be.
7.4, update and discussion on the Yahara Crossing Development Project, also known as,
The headwaters. Not letting it go.
well, I'll tell you how bad I am. I called him today and I said, what is Yahara Crossing Development Project, isn't it?
Maybe
So,
we should have called it the headwaters at Yahara Crossing.
oh, not a bad idea. Ship has not sailed. Just saying. It doesn't come official until that building's up and you put a sign on it. So.
I like it.
So didn't include this in packets because we were waiting on some updates from Kaler Slater, which came in this morning. But I've got it on screen now. You can either look down or up, wherever is easier for you. They still are operating under the assumption that this is the headwaters, and I'm not going to have them change it until it becomes absolutely necessary. But we've been working through with Kaler Slater, McGann Construction, and the team at Veerbecker. Jay and myself have been working through some of the early design and concepts. So I wanted to kind of share a little bit of where we're at on things. I will start with, let's start with floor plans because I think the facade is probably where most of the conversation is going to be. So this is just a layout of the underbuilding parking. There's 45 stalls, some area for bike, gas meters. I believe inaccurately says laundry. This will be more of a shop space, workshop for Jay, and maintenance area. Storage lockers throughout. You see 38 storage lockers in this area here, as well as storage lockers at each of the ends of these parking areas here. In the center, you got more mechanicals in the elevators, and then trash located on the south of the building. So just to orient ourselves, Highway V is up here at the top of the page. Main Street is running north-south on the east side of the page, or the right of the page.
And when you say lockers, those, you're talking about storage lockers for the tenant?
For the tenants, yep. And because this is a tax credit project, in order for those lockers to be part of our tax credit basis to get funds for those, we can't charge for the use of them. If we were to charge for any of that space, it wouldn't be eligible to receive tax credit equity. So it's an added feature for everybody.
How many spaces are for handicap?
That is something that Jay has been harping on every single time we talk with these folks. So right now, the answer is too few. So we'll need to increase that.
Is
Right.
there any magic number you have to have? Or not?
There is a required number. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but there is a required number. And because this building will be predominantly for seniors and disabled, we'll have a higher number.
It's like 1.5 for multifamily per unit is the way the standard's typically written.
Okay.
Parking spaces?
Handicap spaces? Use your mic or closer.
Sorry. It's a number that's divisible by the total number of parking stalls. And what's available inside, outside, things like that. So it could be this, I'm making up this number, so yeah, but if there's 25 parking stalls, then you're required 1 ADA stall with access, right? Yeah, I mean, the number is very low. If you look at these larger parking lots and you look up where the handicap accessible spots are, they're very few. I mean, you know, there's a couple of businesses down the road I'm very familiar with their lack of parking spots. They have 4, you know, so yeah, it could vary quite a bit.
Rebecca?
So with all that in mind, and thank you for whoever it was that for bringing this up. Hadn't even thought about it. How many people do we currently have over at 509 that need handicap spots with our population there right now? And how many are we trying to aim for?
I believe there's 6, it might be 7 residents that have handicap stickers. We do not even have that many spaces available at the 509 building. We actually have a couple spaces that are designated handicap that would not pass the litmus test for an official handicap spot, but yet they are reserved for, you know, residents to be closer at least. But we just haven't gotten into this, and I'll say every meeting that we have with these guys, we dig deeper into something. We just haven't had the time to get into that part yet. I have no doubt that they will do every bit of due diligence that they need to and figure out a way to make what's necessary happen.
So we've also got some spots on surface too, correct, for residents. I'm assuming at least a couple of those will end up being handicapped as well. And I guess my question is, these are not going to be reserved spots for the most part, correct? Or are they going to have reserved spots?
By
unit. The reason I ask is there a way for our handicapped folks that truly do need a handicap spot? Can we have a couple of those spots be reserved for those specific people?
Yeah,
Just a
we
question.
probably could. And we haven't, again, as Jada was kind of saying, we haven't really dug into that level. I guess I had always had in my mind that they wouldn't be assigned to a unit and that would just sort of be open, but it certainly could be.
So
we
I'm
could
thinking in
explore.
terms of somebody who has to get in and out of the car who's in a wheelchair. I'm
Yeah.
thinking in terms of like my stepson. He has to have enough space to be able to open his vehicle, to be able to maneuver, to get into the car, and then be able to take his chair apart and put it in his car, or vice, the opposite direction. So we've got to make sure that anyone who is in the facility, living in the facility, has access to something like that if they have a car. If they don't have a car, then that's a moot point.
Well, and I think these are good points. I think it's a level of detail we're just not
We're not
at yet. So,
Well, and I think that also the tricky piece of it comes in is that, you could have somebody in there for 2 years and then somebody else comes in who doesn't have the same requirement unless it was a designated unit that was tied to a designated space, which I think is kind of what you're saying. So yeah, we'll bring this up next time we have a conversation with them. So we have just so you know, we have regular meetings every Tuesday. So we'll look at that. Those are all great points. Moving on from parking under building is first floor. So your kind of site plan, I guess, if you will, on the building. You see the surface parking on the north side of the building off of Highway V, kind of similar to what we've been looking at. The blue space is common area that's quote unquote community space. So you'll see a fitness area, 1,100 square feet fitness area. You can kind of see the units themselves throughout. I'll zoom in here. This is, again, very preliminary, but any input or feedback or thoughts, I lost my controls here. Shout them out. So the thought is here that we can't really see it from this, but there's a walkway along this side of the building that would, so you could enter the building here from the west side. You could also enter through the community space in here. And so there'd be a lounge area, kind of a dining area, similar to how we have at 509 currently. They put an arts and crafts area. I'm not sure what that entails. Brandy might know, she's arts and craftsy. Right, yeah, tables. A restroom facility, kitchen, coffee, mail island, I'm gonna say. Then the other thought was to have in the northeast corner where the main entrance to the facility is. So this is kind of the corner of V and Main Street. This would be the main entry point to the residential. This was all key fobbed, so it's a secure building. But think if some of our residents are walking over to the senior center, this is the exit and entrance that they'd be going in and out of here. Leasing office for Jay, and then packages, those types of things. On the outdoor space, some private patios for the first floor units. Thought would be to have potentially a community garden. This is all just kind of throwing ideas out here. A lot of green space. I think Jay might have mentioned in one of our calls having an area for pets. And then landscaping and parking. One of the things that we've been going back and forth on is this drive aisle, which connects the back, it kind of goes around here and provides circulation. From a space standpoint, that's going to be a one-way street. And currently in this view, that one way is going from Main Street up to Highway V. I think we're going to end up reversing that to go the opposite so that it would basically direct traffic to Main Street rather than Highway V. So people aren't turning out left onto a higher traffic road. Mhm.
But they can get in from Main Street as well?
They can get in from both directions, yes.
Okay.
But it's going to be a one-way.
What's that? So it'd be one way to, well, that's a good point. We might,
In both places.
right. So it would be two-way. You can kind of see at the bottom here where it bumps out. But now even just talking this through, I think this is going to have to get reconfigured more. So it's a larger drive aisle here, and then it narrows down to a one-way through there, and then it's large up at the top again. But I think it may make sense to make it one way from here on up and have it two-way here because residents are going to want to come in this way and park in these spots. So,
One question as far as up on the entrance exit, whatever you want to call it, up on V.
mhm.
I'm trying to think of the safety aspect of being able to pull out onto V. Would it be advisable to, at certain times of the day, and I'm thinking in terms of like when school is being let out, when you're going to have the highest traffic, probably, to only have people be able to turn right out of there?
Yeah, so this was a question. We have a development review team meeting with our staff the second Thursdays on the village side of things of each month. And we kind of talked about that a little bit today. And it's essentially going to be an enforcement issue, right? Like somebody who wants to go up there can just make a left turn regardless of what it's posted there. But it was discussed. What's that? You could do both. Having a one-way on the side of the building, like not up by the, so you can see where it's wider here. I'm not doing a great job explaining this. It's wider here. So like from here through this section would be a one-way traffic only heading south. But everything from here, you can go in and out here. So this is two-way. That way, anybody who's coming for the commercial can still go in and out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you're wanting them to go south, you're going to have to reorient the parking spots.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, so this is yeah.
that was confusing me.
Yeah, sorry. It's old diagram. So, I mean, these are all the things that we're kind of spitballing on.
So as far as security.
Yep.
Okay, so are they using, is it key card or what, or? So basically, if they're parking underneath, they're just going through a door to get to their place?
So it'd be secured entrances even from the underground parking. So it'd be a key fob or key card.
And we'll have extras available for them to come to the office and say,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's similar to how the building is now. It's key fobbed. The one thing that I'll point out here, you can see, which is potentially going to be a design issue, or is going to be a design issue for us. you see where it says existing power line? If you drive by there, you'll note that on the property, there's a very large pole there with this black dotted line is where how deep the guy wires for that go into the site. So there's an easement on the property, a 25-foot wide easement, and we're gonna have to have a conversation with American Transmission Company, ATC, about how that pole is gonna look. So that's something just to bring to your awareness, we're still working through, but that's a big one.
So related to that power thing, it's a pole and then you have the line underneath. Is there any way they can just get the lines underneath and get rid of the pole?
It would be expensive. I'm not sure if that's even, these are variable. They may or may not. I don't know. That's a conversation we're gonna have, but
Okay.
it's also, no matter what we do with this, it's gonna be an added cost. I just don't know how much that's gonna be. So the goal from my perspective is to try to find a way to design around it if possible. And then that, obviously you could see where the lines go. So right now it's not possible. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to either resituate those lines or replace the pole with a different kind of pole. Jay's kind of mentioned a big old honking metal pole from time to time. Something, but right now it's not workable.
Other questions? Okay,
Okay, we'll move on to second and third story. So this is just the unit layout. Again, centralized trash, elevators in the center, stairwells at the two ends of the building. Right now we are working as if this has two elevator shafts. So as we go, depending on what happens with costs, that may be an area that gets pushed down to one, but right now we're operating under two. And then the third floor layout is basically identical to that.
Where's the washroom?
So laundry is in unit.
Oh, it is in unit.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And we did see some preliminary floor plans. They didn't send them over with this PDF though, so unfortunately I don't have those to share tonight.
So will we be providing the washer dryer units or will they have to have their own?
Those will probably be ours,
Stackables or side by sides?
side by side.
Okay.
So onto the facade. This is they still call it the headwaters in the facade. I didn't tell them to do that, just so you know.
Sure.
This is the latest iteration. I will say that we've gone back and forth with this. Don't get too tied to this. This is obviously not a final version, but just wanted to get it to you now to get some early feedback on it, just to show where it's come from. I brought some of the other versions that they had so that we're looking at the same facades. So this is kind of what they proposed from the start. Some of the feedback that we gave them initially was that it was kind of gray and washed out. There wasn't enough contrast, but there were darker tones in this. You can see some of the, I wonder if it'll zoom in. Yeah, so you see they tried to tie to some of the dark metal that the library has, those types of things. You can kind of see the wood in the, I don't even know what you want to call that, roof. Thank you. So those types of things, and then carrying the metal down through there to break it up. One consideration why these balconies are stacked above other balconies and then open space. One of the things that was mentioned that McGann brought up was a reluctance to have open space over living space underneath in case there's a leak. Obviously, if there's a leak in this scenario, it drains out to somebody's patio and not somebody's bedroom. So that was one piece there. And so it's more from that into this, which obviously has a lot more brighter colors. Still not really sure on some of the contrast or just that really stark white. But I guess before we get into comments, I'll just show you the other sides of the facade and then I'll get some feedback from y'all. So this is more of the commercial side. So this is that corner piece here, a darker brick. This is supposed to be wood accents over there. A darker brick. I wish they had a higher resolution here. It's kind of tough to see, but this is, I believe, a stone facade. Again, just playing with different materials. These are metallic panels. They had these a brighter version earlier, but they were kind of reflective. This again is the view from Main Street. So one thing, and Brandy had kind of pointed this out, was initially we thought we would see more direct access to Main Street, but you can see here what the grade looks like from Highway V. It's like 12 to 15 feet of grade. So to have that carry out to the street is challenging. So these are direct access, but they're direct access to sort of a walkway, I guess. That's a little better view of it.
So they'll be able to access their apartment from here or
Mhm.
from the hallway.
Or from the hallway. Mhm. So this, you can see a little bit more of the detail with the brick themselves.
Looks like there's little doorbells.
Little doorbells, yeah, or lighting or something, yeah. And again, keeping the wood accents in various spots. They subbed out a lot of the darker accents for white in this version. So initial take on the either colors, materials, massing, any of the above.
I would just weigh in and say, I do like the lighter colors. I like having contrasts in the building. And I don't know if there's a way or if it would be of value to try a darker color on the top of the tower area. I call it a tower, but right on the corner of Main and V. And then pull that in somewhere else. But I do like, it's bright, it's airy. If we could then have green space and the trees and landscaping looking nice, it would brighten that whole area up. When I think about what's there now, it's kind of dead looking and
Sure.
dingy. So this looks bright and clean. Yes, Rebecca.
Yeah, I agree that I like the lighter colors a lot better, and I do think that we need just a little bit more contrast. I'm almost on the tower and on the front of the work or the business side, and maybe even a little bit on the residential side. I'm wondering if those metallic tiles aesthetics, it's all about aesthetics, almost a wood grainy. Maybe a darker wood grainy, but still metallic for easy care and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think I love the wood tones that I'm seeing in there. And I think if we could draw a little bit more, doesn't have to be overly, just a little bit more, I think that would really make it pop. I like the overall design. I think the overall design is solid.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Now's your chance, so lay it on. Yeah. How do you feel about the massing of it? Because I know a lot of the stuff that we tried to focus on early on and what we've heard at various times is not having it feel, blocky or imposing on the street, those types of things. Does this feel like we're accomplishing that?
Well, I think with the patios kind of being a setback and the block or tower on the corner of the front, it helps with some of that. Yeah. I know we had talked about a terrace or something and pushing it back, but
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a great point. So we kind of moved away from that a little bit for the reasons that I was saying earlier in terms of having, potential opportunity for leakage into unit below. So we tried, a couple things that we tried to do with this in order to mitigate that imposing. So the setback was to try to make it feel less imposing. You can kind of see that third story looks like it's short, right? Like the second story comes all the way up to the windows. That's just an appearance thing. So the facade goes higher to make it feel like the 2 stories is higher, but the floor of that third story is actually a little lower. So that was one way. And then you're right, the balconies kind of break it up a little bit too.
Alex, I just have a question on the commercial facing side, just to verify. So those apartment units that are along that side will not have any outdoor patio balcony?
On the north side of the building, they will not, but on the south side, interior to the courtyard, they will.
They will, okay. Thank you.
Yep. One other question, I guess, is how do you all feel about the tower? Brandy was kind of mentioning earlier that it feels kind of like blocky, I guess.
It reminds me of the indoor storage facility buildings.
There you go. And if there was an opportunity to kind of either remove the top block or do something different there and have it
We could make it a
like a
dome.
balcony space or something up there to break it up a little bit more. And I will, what's that?
I said you could do like a dome shape maybe instead of a square.
No, no silos. We got too many silos around here.
So is that just,
Orange.
is that just open in there all the way to the
No.
top, or is that actually on the floor? That is an apartment?
That is it. Yep. So I'll show you the floor layout here.
Apartment.
So that's the
Wow.
two bedroom
Oh, okay.
on both the second and third stories is right there in that corner.
I kind of like the tower.
I will say that the architect, the design team has struggled with it a little bit in terms of how to really work with it.
Well, I think if you,
This is something that they really wanted feedback on of
yeah, I
how you all wanted.
that
to anchor-
aesthetics.
How you want to anchor that building.
Sure.
They're very interested in how you guys perceive it, so.
It sounds like there's positive feedback.
Because I know exactly what you're talking about. And at first I thought the same thing, but at the same time, I really liked the overall design. But I think if we can get the contrast
Sure.
right,
Yep.
the aesthetics part of it, I think we can make that work, because that would be a nice apartment in there.
Yes, it will. Yeah, one of the things too that Brandy's mentioned, and I'm trying to think in my mind, I know there's a development that has this, I just can't think of it. It's not the one that we looked at earlier, but that has kind of like a timber frame protrusions on that corner piece that kind of go out. I can't explain it, but
Even some awnings on the top.
Like the top of a
I know where it
pergola,
is.
you know,
it's from our redevelopment
when
plan.
the sun moves, the shade,
Yeah,
adding some kind of features.
I would.
Just to dress
I think
it up
that
and
would
give
be
it the
really
contrast,
nice.
rather than a big.
Just, it would be just
Freedom
another
Cell.
little break. It doesn't even have to be something dramatic, just a little something to kind of an awning effect without a true awning.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah,
Dragon.
yes.
One of the things that we have to be careful of with those, and I've seen this in another building that I was part of the design, they can throw ice and they can throw snow and they present other issues of maintenance. So you gotta be really sure about what you're doing.
That's a great point. That's on the north side of the building too.
Yep. You got a lot of traffic there.
I was trying to find it, but maybe this isn't the one, but this is from our redevelopment plan.
I mean, the roof on top
How do I zoom?
sort of looks like a fire station.
I like the one on the bottom there.
So this is on Monroe Street in Madison, and this kind of has a tower corner.
It almost reminds you of a.
Oh,
fire
Dan.
station,
Dan.
Sure.
Which I like that effect.
Sure. Okay. Well, anyway, sorry, I took us in a tangent.
You know, you and I aren't fancy.
Well, I think it would be good to ask what the engineering, the snow, the ice, in terms of just some kind of breakage, just enough on the top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that,
I like it the way it is too.
I like this. And a little more contrast might be good, but I think it's subtle. It's, it's probably easier to maintain. I look at cost of construction. I think there's a lot of value to this design, so.
One other question.
Yes.
Will any of the windows be able to be opened by residents?
I assume so.
By code, okay. At least one of the, okay, okay.
The other thing that I was thinking about is who we put in what apartments will become a challenge.
We don't want to jump down that hole yet, please.
First, I'll get it up.
Yeah.
This is gonna be that will be a whole nother conversation,
Here's the thing.
hours of conversation.
These are gonna be really nice apartments. No matter who gets what, it's gonna be really nice compared to what they're in now.
There's a lot of residents that feel very strongly that they deserve places already, so it's already been talked about to some degree.
My only point was going to be, there are a couple of residents that having a balcony on a third floor might not be a good thing.
True. Mhm.
That's my only point.
I will also just say, putting on the financial hat of all this, it is great that we have some units that are nicer than others in terms of the 2-bedroom at the corner and those types of things. But the tricky piece about this is because it is a tax credit project, it will have rent caps. So we can't really extract full value out of those. It's not like we can charge, above a certain amount for the primo unit. So they are nice, and it's great that residents will be able to have that. But we're also operating under caps too.
And if we want to attract people to the building, we maybe want to kind of hold some of those for
Sure.
new people coming in. Just a thought.
Okay, well, I will pass along some of the feedback that I heard here and then keep you updated the next time.
And then for those businesses or business, we
Mhm.
should have a really nice little restaurant, coffee shop, pastry shop. Just suggestion.
Yeah, we've been talking on the commercial side of things, we've been talking about things like the first floor ceiling heights, right? So that whole first floor, again, going back to the point of, different units having different features or amenities, will be 11-foot ceilings because the commercial space, needs higher ceilings. So those first floor units will have nice high ceilings too. So it's 4,500 square feet of commercial space, and that could be anywhere from 4 potential tenants to just 1. If one wanted to take the whole thing, it's flexible.
Nice big grocery store.
Yeah, 2. Okay, thank you. We're submitting for a commercial.
Say 1 or 4.
No, there's no deadline. I mean, we'll be probably bringing on a broker. We reviewed some of the proposals earlier this year. We'll probably bring on a broker maybe around the time we start construction would be my guess. Sometime in that time frame, maybe a little bit before. And then, no deadline, just trying as hard as we can to get those spaces leased. Although I guess that's a good point, because we did also talk about potentially having a set aside a space for like a startup. So when we get closer, not right now, I can't think about that right now, but when we get closer, we'll have to kind of flesh that out a little bit more.
And just remember, there's very little in this project that's still not in flux or could be based on things that are continually discussed. I mean, Tuesday we brought up trash for the commercial spaces, and
Right.
it's another hurdle to go over. So expect to see small to medium changes monthly.
Yep.
And I think that as long as our goals are being met, we can't be super micromanaging this work of the staff, so.
Well, I'm just glad to hear that this didn't just get like crumbled into a ball tonight and thrown in the corner. So that's good feedback.
No, it's good work. It's good work. Yep.
That doesn't count.
I see. Well, we got that one. All right. There is no old business, so we're going to move to reports. And with that, we'll go to the Housing Division, Jefferson Square Financial Update.
I'm sorry, guys. I struggle enough with my, my job I can't understand the Jefferson Square, the way that they do their financials. So I gotta lean on these guys for that. I'm struggling still enough with ours.
So they're pretty much running as usual, I would say. The only thing that's new on this one, and I was talking with Carol before, because I didn't even know what the heck it was, are quarterly fees for Prudential's hands-on management came in. That was the first time I've seen them. This was the first one of the year. So that 4,700 there was associated with that. So if you recall, we switched, I think last year, to a managed account with Prudential. So there's a fee associated with managing the investments. But other than that, I mean, they continue to run a sound financial ship, quote unquote. What's that? Yes. Yep. It's percentage based. Yep.
Can you see can we see the bottom?
Yeah. I gotta figure out where the zoom
Thank
is
you.
again. Sorry. Bottom line. So this was a question too from way back. Do we want to see these more format how we used to see and we're used to seeing our financials, or are these okay?
These are okay.
Okay. Okay.
We'll get used to them.
As long as Carol understands.
Less work for you.
Yep. So I will direct your attention then to the operating expenses before depreciation.
Yeah, I was just, excuse me for a second, you're running less of a loss than we had budgeted for at this point in the year, which is a positive thing, even though, yes, it is a loss, but that's after depreciation, so.
It's accomplishment, less of a loss. Yeah.
You're doing just fine. You're running right with budget.
I guess that was what my question was going to be, is are we where we were hoping to be? And because some of this is a little Greek to me, I can make heads or tails out of some of it, but is there any red flags that you're seeing anywhere? Okay.
I will mention, not that this is a red flag, don't take this the wrong way, but both the CFO and the accounting manager at Attic Angel have both put in their notice for retirement. So they are in the process of recruiting their two top accounting positions. Like I said, not necessarily a red flag, but they do have some changes coming over at Attic Angel. So we'll be watching
They
things
can't have
closely.
you.
I didn't say they could. I just.
Not allowed.
Okay. Any other questions on this? But thank you. It looks like the loss is not as bad as it could have been.
Right where you had budgeted to be.
And is there anything we need to do to take corrective action on the loss? Just to keep running smooth, okay. How about public housing update? Financials.
Everything's going swimmingly. More unit turn contracts. Remember, we're looking at the end of April. That's going to be the biggest cost. More legal fees as we're running into the audit costs jumped into this month as well. Continuing to try and build the checking account, which keeps going up with the WIDA payments with the increased revenue, so that's good. But yeah, we haven't incurred any large costs. Well, I've got a large one coming, but that's for future discussion. But yeah, as far as this one's, it's good.
So again, just to reiterate, you'll see 920, which was our old fund for this, and you'll also see 940. 920 obviously has no activity in it. 940 is the one to pay attention to from here on out until we close on the sale of the property. And then, well, I think we'll still use 940. Yep. Correct.
Related to those duplexes, any movement?
No. Mm-mm.
No bites?
No, I was talking with one individual on that and they just kind of dropped off. I think the price point that we had was outside of what they were looking for, which is fine.
Okay, so the bottom line is that we are seeing a net improvement with the new rents.
Yes, tremendously. Yeah.
And we have someone who's buying the building, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
They'll contract to use Jay.
Yep.
So that's a positive thing. Okay. When they buy the building, they will become property taxpayers?
Yes.
And this, so we won't have a payment in lieu of taxes.
So that's a good point. So if and when, nothing's a done deal until it's a done deal. If and when they do close on the property, not only will you not see the pilot in here, you won't see any financial statements associated with operating that building. So there's not really going to be, you'll still see activity in 940 to the degree that it exists for the duplexes or whatever else. But you won't see pilot from 509, you won't see anything because that'll essentially be their financial statements and no longer will it be ours. Yes.
You'll still have a pilot. It'll just be based on a much lower value because the duplexes obviously will just be by themselves without the 509 building. So there'll still be costs. It's just they're going to be much smaller.
Yep, okay. All right. Anything else on that? Any other questions? If not, we'll go to the update on.
Shane, before you jump off of that, you might want to consider the fact that when you sell 509, there's part of your agreement with the village is that you guys are, CDA is paying the village to do all the accounting for the CDA. And now that we aren't doing the accounting for Jefferson Square and we might not be doing the accounting for 509, you may want to renegotiate that contract because we're doing a lot less work. So you may want to consider that monthly fee.
That's a good idea. But we'll still have bookkeeping related to the new building.
Well, you'll have bookkeeping related to the duplexes and then those 5 units that are still occupied over on 109 West North Street. So I mean, we're doing some work, but just not nearly the volume we were before. So
What about the construction loan? Will that, and the construction project, there'll be some bookkeeping with that, right?
yeah. Yeah, but just not to the extent and not the frequency that we were doing when we were processing monthly rent and paying all the bills. And I just think it's something to consider.
Yep, well, we should look at that.
We also won't have the on-call staff. Currently, we use public services. Jay's in the rotation with them to manage the facilities and to be on call, and that won't be the case anymore at that property. So I think, that's what I was just saying, I think I have a meeting set up with village administrator Chang next week to talk about how we might shapeshift that agreement a little bit.
Just thinking about the residents for a minute. If they don't have staff on call, if we don't have staff on call, well, the new owners will have to have emergency services available if there's a flood.
Yeah, so when we've talked about it with them, we're pulling our team off of 24/7 on call. And they'll be handling on call stuff. So whether that's through contractors or One of the owners seems to be very hands-on and has volunteered himself to do that kind of stuff. So it'll be outside of our hands and more in their hands.
Just call Rebecca.
Yeah, and I want to like just
No.
to be clear. Yeah, we won't have that. I want to set a firm line on that too, because I don't want Jay to be turning into like a full-time on-call over there either. So we're setting a pretty hard line.
Good.
Jay won't, full-time on-call person over there.
We need to protect Jay.
One of the other things is I continue to get these notices about recertification from HUD. Is it just a computer tapping me, or, I keep forwarding those to you?
Yeah, sorry, I never responded to him. I did do the recertification,
Okay.
but
So
those
there's-
are legitimate emails.
There's a lot of stuff like that. I mean, I field weekly numerous calls looking for subsidized housing. And I'm hesitant to go too crazy on trying to remove ourselves from these lists, knowing that I'm gonna have to be back on them again as a entity that's gonna supply that. So there's gonna continue to be stuff like that that's gonna come down the pike.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then we'll move to update on housing units.
So we have some really great news. 720 DeForest Street, the bane of all of our existence for the last year, has officially been reserved, has a reservation on it. They're gonna move in on 7/15, potentially sooner, depending on the sale of their house, the closing of the sale in their house. And since our last meeting, go ahead.
How low do you have to go?
I actually, Demery did not, I'm assuming she did not tell me that it went lower, so I'm assuming it's 250. She's out this week, so I didn't get to ask her directly. But since our last meeting, we've had two other residents that have said they're gonna move out, 737 Jefferson Court. They had the resident, was a resident that passed away. His wife, Elaine, fell and she ended up moving to a care facility. That one actually also has a reservation deposit on it already. So if there's any question as to whether it was a unit specific to 720 or if it was the place in general, that was answered pretty much immediately, I guess. Also, 705 Jefferson Court has also declared intention to be, and she'll be moving out the end of the month. I guess she's been there since 1997, so that one's gonna take a bit of work to get it done. But yeah, so we'll have some more changeover going on in Jefferson Square. Demery did wanna bring up that there was been a few ongoing landscaping concerns, just like every building in their repertoire. Residents are struggling to handle expectations that they have versus contract obligations from the landscaping contractor. So they've been trying to mitigate those between residents and the contractors. They had a major water leak issue that happened also. There was some consternation with how that was kind of handled. It was a very tricky situation that ended up being a water leak under the concrete in the building. They needed to find to have a higher leak detector and chisel up concrete, and it was a pretty big deal with a resident that is a very private person, so it was limiting on some of the time that they could get in and do stuff. So that was an ongoing situation that I felt handled accordingly. Some over there think it could have been handled a little bit better. So if any of you all hear anything about that. Yeah, and there's continued Cam's workspace, the garage over there is a source of tension with some of the residents. He needs more space with the sale of the building, the 509 building. There's potentially more things that need to go over there. Some residents are disturbed that they lost their shelf space and workspace in the garage. Yeah, as those units don't have a lot of space for that type of stuff. So they're trying to work through figuring that out. But
And you're saying it's our stuff that wants to go over there?
so when Zach and myself, when I did both, we have lots of stuff. The 509 building was our workshop, our home base for
Right.
most everything maintenance related over there. I passed as much to Cam that I thought was able to fit in the garage and allow him space, allow the residents to have their space still. There is more over at 509. Some of it will probably get thrown away, honestly, holding on to stuff that might be unrealistic to need. There are some stuff that's going to have to potentially move out of there. I'm going to be in discussions with the new owners to see if I can have a space dedicated at that building until we can get spatial stuff figured out over at Jefferson Square. Trey and Andrew have been really easy to work with. I don't think it's going to be an issue. We don't have a space issue at our building, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Well, I see your hand. One thing we talked about at the last meeting was potentially getting a storage unit. They're not that expensive, and, you know, it allows us to get our stuff in one place, get it out of there, not to irritate people, and not to cause mingling. And I know that's a little bit of a pain for you, but until we get your workshop set up.
Well, it's not a pain for me. None of this is a pain for me. It's a pain for Attic Angel, for Cam in particular, with, you know, dealing with those guys. So like I said, I'll talk with Trey and Andrew and see what it looks like. I don't see it's going to be much of a concern at all. They still have to work through their issues with the residents and the spaces involved, and they're being proactive about it. So they'll get it figured out, I'm pretty sure.
That was basically going to be my question, was about a potential work storage space, or even just a storage space for the stuff that you don't really need on a regular basis,
Sure.
and which would free up space, free up the tension.
Well,
provide you, I mean,
I brought up a number of solutions that I thought were relevant or might be acceptable, but I refuse to tell them how to do their business. So it's
True.
ultimately their job to manage a facility. They need to do it how they think is going to be best for their operation. I know that Cam's there five hours a day, which I personally don't think is enough, probably. I know the workload that can be going on, especially certain times of the year over there, to be traveling back and forth to a storage locker to get some things doesn't sound like a great solution unless it's necessary.
It would be our stuff.
it would be our stuff, not their stuff, is what we're talking about. The stuff like from 509.
Were you talking about moving stuff from 509 to?
So I'm talking about stuff that belongs to Jefferson Square.
Oh, I'm not
That's-
talking about that.
No, I'm not. Our stuff is not a problem. I'm the zero problems with our stuff.
Oh,
I
okay.
have stuff at 509 that is Jefferson Square stuff. It's
Got
different
it.
for me to have
Okay.
CDA stuff that I'm going to use in the management of the facility versus having things that Jefferson Square owns that we're storing.
That makes
in
better sense now. I was
them.
misunderstanding. I
Yep.
was thinking
I'm sorry, Mia. I just
stuff
wasn't.
that was for 509,
Sure.
and it's actually, you've got stuff from Jefferson Square over there that needs to come back to Jefferson Square. Yeah, you're right. They need to figure it out.
Well, and they'll work through it. So I think that's Jefferson Square, public housing. I was on my first extended vacation in the end of the last month and didn't get as much done with the 2 units that are vacant as I would like, but they're really close to completion, and it's really been a struggle to try and find people, even applicants. So hoping that that changes here real soon, to find people to get those units filled up soon. If you look at the prices that we're getting for WIDA rents, which is where we started to list these things, Alex and I had the discussion that we needed to drop those prices down. It's it's pretty competitive with high priced rents for what we're offering at that building, so.
There may be an opportunity with some of the tenants moving out of the property that we acquired, 109, for the redevelopment, for them to relocate if it made sense for them at 509 or something.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll get it worked out. We have faith. Anything else? If not, we'll move on to redevelopment financial update.
Only thing of note in this April statement is that you'll see the payment to the car wash actually get processed. And then some ongoing legal fees associated with the various purchases and real estate closings.
Jen, last time you mentioned something about the car wash owner being like a little used and
Yeah.
like what's going on? Any update on that?
That was the one and only conversation I had. I never got another phone call,
Okay.
never heard from an attorney. So I'm assuming that he just went his way. That's my guess.
Sheila, was your question about the former owner?
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't hear you. I'm sorry. All right, so Prudential investment statement.
Yep, so that was in your packet as well. Slight tick from April to May.
Okay. Any questions on that? If not, we have no communications that I'm aware of. We have no closed session. So unless there's other business to come before this body, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:27 PM.